Greetings, Rebel fans. My name is Jason Kelly, Jason Kelly Esquire, in fact. I'd like to welcome you all onto the show tonight as we have a very special episode of the Let's Run podcast. We are deep in off-season mode. Lots going on right now. We took a week break as I am currently studying for the bar exam. The bar exam has been absolutely brutal to study for. And so it's been all that I can do not to spend too much time on Twitter arguing and discussing with all of my fellow college football, Mountain West, future Pac-12 fans. I'd like to welcome you on the show tonight. We have a special edition of the Let's Run podcast, maybe the best Let's Run podcast of all time. In fact, I would harbor a guess that this will be the best Let's Run podcast of all time. And today we have a curious case of the Mountain West Conference. Now, just for reference, I'm going to repost this. I'm going to make sure we get this in. Just for reference, I and the people down here in Vegas, it has become clear, and it's been clear for a long time. I don't want to act like it isn't. It's become clear that despite all my whining and moaning and complaining, that UNLV has set its course to remain in the Mountain West Conference. They've chosen their path. And so now, thank you, brother. Appreciate that, man. Yeah, you should be a Run and Rebel season ticket holder. It's the best, and I hope that you shoot me a message during the season, and I'll come up and I'll meet up with you, and we can talk hoops a little bit. All right, just shoot me a message during the season, football or basketball, and I'll come meet with you anywhere you want in the stadium or the Thomas and Mack. And so, essentially, what's going to happen tonight is we are going to have a trial. Now, for those of you who don't know, I am recently graduated from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas Law School, the law school of the state of Nevada. I am not a licensed attorney yet, as I have not passed the bar, but I did mock trial, and I've always really enjoyed this format of finding the truth about a topic. And the topic today will be the viability of the Mountain West Conference, the argument that the Mountain West Conference is the best place for UNLV to be until the year 2032. The argument that the Mountain West Conference will set UNLV up for future success. And perhaps most controversially, the argument that by the year 2032, maybe 2033, 2034, within the next 10 years, the Mountain West will still exist as a conference, and the Pac-12 will not. That is what is going to be argued in this trial today. Lots and lots and lots of stuff. And so lots of stuff to get to today. But I want to first kind of set some ground rules about, what we're arguing here. I'm not rehashing UNLV's decision. This is, the assumption that UNLV has made the decision to stay in the Mountain West. So it's not really I'm not going to dive into UNLV's decision making. UNLV's made its decision. And the reason why I'm doing this is because there has been no bigger critic of UNLV's. In fact, I would say anybody on planet Earth. I don't think anybody's criticized UNLV for the decision to stay in the Mountain West as much as I have. Nobody has. Nobody on Earth. I've certainly been the most public about it. I've talked about it a lot on Twitter. I've tried not to talk about it too much on my podcast, but I've talked about it a lot on Twitter. And I think it's important if you take a stand. If you take a stand so hard, you have to be able to argue the opposite side of it as well. If you're going to believe something and you're going to, articulate it and really think something out, you have to be able to take the opposing side of that argument. And so that's what this trial is about. I want to assume the role of the defense attorney for the Mountain West Conference against the vicious and untrue allegations from the rest of the college football world, specifically from the Pac-12 people, that the Mountain West Conference is a bull jive conference that shouldn't exist, and that the Mountain West is not viable. All sorts of mudslinging has been going on. You should know that I still wanted UNLV to go into the Pac-12 conference. The fact that I'm making these arguments is not a statement of support for UNLV's decision. However, every single person in America deserves competent legal representation. Every single person in America. And the Mountain West is no different. And so We're going to begin. We're going to go through our points here. We're going to go through our arguments. The first thing we need to do before we go into trial, and this is something that happens before basically every trial. If the Mountain West and Pac-12 were to go to trial, they would have something like this. They might have actually had something like this in mediation. But the first thing that we need to do is go over some stipulated facts. Now, what does that mean? It means that when you have two sides of an opposing argument that are going to kind of duke it out in the court of law, you present the facts that both sides agree upon. So I will be presenting what I believe are pretty uncontroversial facts regarding the situation between the two conferences. I think that these facts are things that could be agreed upon by people from both sides of the argument, and the argument will be undertaken with these facts stipulated from the beginning. So I'm not going to be litigating what are in these stipulated facts. They're just true from the beginning, and they are basically the baseline of any discussion that we're going to have in our fake little trial tonight. And so fact number one, stipulated fact number one, defending the Mountain West. The Mountain West, beautiful, glorious M, beautiful, glorious W. We love the Mountain West. They're a great conference. Kind of sound like Trump there. Stipulated fact number one, conference brands. The Pac-12 has superior brands compared to the Mountain West Conference and is currently in direct competition with the Mountain West, including the crown jewel football and basketball brands in Gonzaga and Boise State. We will not be litigating the quality of the teams of the two conferences. We are stipulating from the beginning that the Pac-12 has better brands. I think that that's pretty fair. Boise State's making the college football playoff. You have Oregon State and Washington State that have long histories as P5 teams. You have San Diego State as a legit basketball power who made the national championship game. You have Gonzaga as a basketball power. You have, solid G5 schools in Fresno, Colorado State, and Utah State. Now, look, they're not perfect, but as a baseline top to bottom, the schools that are currently in or currently will be in the Pac-12 conference, they have better brands. There's no denying that. And it doesn't mean that the Mountain West can't win this argument, as we'll get into a bit later. The second one, financial outlook. The Pac-12 schools will receive a higher payout per institution than the schools in the Mountain West. Because they have better brands, they'll get a higher level of media payout. Now, I don't know exactly what that number is going to be. Anybody telling you they know exactly what the Pac-12 is going to receive in their media payouts is lying to you. They don't know. I'm just saying I think that the Pac-12 schools will receive more per school than the Mountain West schools. Again, that doesn't mean the Mountain West is going to lose, but that is a stipulated fact of the discussion. Fact number three, the Mountain West Conference will retain its current media partners, Fox and CBS, in its upcoming media rights deal. We're not going to argue. We're not going to spend time arguing that the Mountain West is going to lose out on Fox and lose out on CBS. Now, I'm not saying the Pac-12 won't be partnered with those companies, but as a baseline stipulated fact for this discussion, the Mountain West will retain its current media partners. And the Pac-12 may use them too, but the Mountain West isn't going to lose them. The next one, big one. Sorry, we're missing a couple here. Both the Mountain West and the Pac-12 will receive media deals. Now, what does that mean? There's been a lot of people saying, well, the Pac-12 doesn't have a media deal. Pac-12, isn't going to get a media deal. There's been some speculation like that. We're going into this discussion stating that the Pac-12 and the Mountain West Conference will both receive media deals. So that's a stipulated fact. The next one is about the college football playoff. In situations involving similar records between schools between the two conferences, a Pac-12 school will very likely, that's the language I decided to use, because you don't know exactly what the schedules are going to be. But in similar records, in similar situations with similar records, a Pac-12 school will very likely receive preferential treatment over a mountain school by any form of selection committee for the college football playoff. And that should say for the NCAA tournament as well, because especially the Pac-12 is actually much stronger basketball conference compared to the Mountain West than it is a football conference. It's still stronger in both categories, obviously, but the College Football Playoff Committee and the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee will both give likely preferential treatment to Pac-12 schools over Mountain West schools when they're selecting teams for the College Football Playoff. Again, that doesn't mean that Mountain West schools are always going to be locked out or anything. I think a 12-0 Mountain West school could get in over a 8-4 Pac-12 school or a 9-3 Pac-12 school. But if they're both 11-1 or both 12-0, I think the Pac-12 school would get preference over the Mountain West schools. Last page of stipulated facts here. The Pac-12 will add Texas State as its 8th and final member for the foreseeable future. That doesn't mean they're never going to add another member during the term of the 2026 to 2032 media deal. But as of right now, I am stipulating the fact that Texas State will be added as the 8th member of the Pac-12, and that the conferences, at least in their current forms, will look something like what they look right now, just with Texas State as a final member in the Pac-12. So we're not going to sit and argue that the Pac-12 isn't a conference. We're going to agree at the beginning of discussion that the Pac-12 will add Texas State University as their 8th and final member. Next, we're going to talk about the mediation result. The Mountain West, as a stipulated fact, will win at least 1/3 of the disputed amount in mediation. I have that about $55 million. Now, they could win more than that. They could win a little bit less than that. It's just around that number, which, according to the Grant of Rights Agreement, will allow the Mountain West to pay at least 80% of its promised payouts to its schools. The school executed a Grant of Rights Agreement. It talks about how it distributes money that the conference receives, which means the $25 million that UNLV got, they're going to get around $20 million of it. And finally, the last stipulated fact before we get into opening statements. The Mountain West has executed already a legally binding grant of rights through 2032, securing its members from joining the Pac-12. Now, I'm not saying that it's revocable right now. You can make an argument that it will be once the new media deal has been finalized, but it is legally binding. That means that Mountain West schools, which already don't spend a ton of sports on anyway, are incredibly, in fact, I would say they're not going to. They're not going to go to court to get out of the Mountain West Conference. They're not, because they're in a legally binding grant of rights situation. So no Mountain West schools will be joining the Pac-12 prior to the year 2032. That's also a stipulated fact from this discussion. And if you have any comments on the stipulated facts that I'm going over, please put them in the comment section. I'd love to talk to you about them. So let's begin. May it please the court. Ladies and gentlemen, let me go over here. Wait, let me go right here. Opening statement. There we go. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we convene to decide the future of college football in the West. My client, the Mountain West Conference, faces a significant but winnable fight. While the Pac-12 may hold superior brands, it carries with it a legacy of financial stress, leadership instability, and an uncertain future. In contrast, the Mountain West offers predictable, stable, strategic clarity, and the kind of market-aware humility that positions its members, especially UNLV, for sustained success. My argument tonight will center on these key truths. 1, financial security. 2, strategic scheduling flexibility for UNLV and other schools in the Mountain West, but mostly UNLV. 3, expansion stability. 4, realistic market positioning. 5, robust legal security. And finally, the unique and crucial value of West Coast football to media partners. Tonight, I invite you not just to consider what each conference has been, but take a holistic view of the two conferences. And I suppose I will end my opening statement with my favorite quote, maybe in all of fiction. And I'm not going to give it to you verbatim, but essentially it comes from Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones. And he says, "Never forget what you are, wear it like armor, and it cannot be used to harm you." The Mountain West knows exactly what it is. And the Mountain West is very happy to be labeled what it is by the media partners. That level of self-awareness gives them an advantage going into the year 2032. So let's jump into argument number one. Now, obviously, we don't have opposing counsel in this little court exercise that we're doing tonight. But argument number one, it is financial stability. Now, what does that mean? Let's go over it. The Mountain West is currently not reliant on court cases for its existence / survival. In fact, the Mountain West is not a litigation heavy league. They are not reliant on judges and their rulings. They have a they have a modest financial outlook, stable but modest, that does not rely on the outcome of court cases. The Pac-12, on the other hand, is relying on the outcome of court cases. In fact, I would say if the Mountain West won a great victory, $120 million, in the landscape of G5 college football, that kind of payout would be really damaging, potentially fatally damaging. The Mountain West, in its grant of rights, has as part of the agreement that despite the outcome of these lawsuits that are going on right now, the Mountain West is still legally secure in its membership in a legally binding grant of rights agreement. That means that the Mountain West promises to pay its schools a $3.5 million annual media payout. And despite the outcomes of these cases, their membership remains secure. Now, listen, that's not a ton of money. We're not going to act like this $3.5 million payout, which is promised in the grant of rights, is something crazy. But what it is it's a secure number. And if the Mountain West loses, its schools aren't going to suddenly be forced to pay an amount that would significantly burden their ability to participate in the House settlement and to project financial security. The Mountain West schools, they're not schools that spend a ton generally. UNLV is obviously becoming a part of that exception. And Air Force as well, you'd be surprised to see, spends a lot on athletics. A lot of that has to do with their status as a service academy, of course. But there is a financial stress in the new Pac-12 to make the exit from the Mountain West worth it for these exiting schools. There is not that stress in the new Mountain West. Now, you may think the stress is worth it, but for my first point, the financial stability for G5, we're not talking Power 5 schools, the financial security for G5 schools gives the Mountain West a leg up. Financial security is huge when you're trying to pay athletes. Financial security is huge when you're operating at the G5 level. And that is a significant advantage that the Mountain West has over the Pac-12. So let's go on to the next point. The next point is, it's kind of a big one, but it is the ability of, I'm going to talk about UNLV specifically, but I also think that San Jose and Air Force, to a lesser extent, and Hawaii even, can also operate in this realm. But it is the ability of Mountain West schools, namely UNLV, to adjust their non-conference schedules to help compensate for their lack of competitive play inside conference play. So let's go adjustment of schedules. So UNLV specifically, I'll use an example here. Last season, UNLV basically flexed into a game versus Syracuse, a Power 5 school that ended up being ranked at one point in the season, that took down big schools like Miami, preventing them from joining into the college football playoff. And UNLV was able to do this because of their geographic strength. UNLV basketball and football-wise has always been able to schedule well. They've always been able to get home and homes. They've always been able to get teams to come to Las Vegas to play games, simply because it's very easy to get to Las Vegas. It's not a big deal for athletic departments to get their football teams to Las Vegas. There's plenty of facilities here, obviously. And there's just kind of a draw of playing in the sports entertainment capital of the world. And so UNLV has the ability, and we see in their coming non-conference schedules in the coming years, there's a lot of good Power 5 schools that UNLV is going to be playing in the non-conference. But Las Vegas geography gives UNLV, and specifically this is about UNLV, although I am arguing for the Mountain West Conference, gives UNLV the ability to schedule against good teams and make them, as the flagship football brand, which they are being presented as, of the new Mountain West Conference, more attractive to a college football playoff committee. Now, that does not mean that UNLV is obviously, going to schedule amazing and then get the benefit of the doubt over schools like Boise State. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying UNLV can use their geography in the new Mountain West to schedule better Power 5 competition in the non-conference. And while they're going to play weaker competition inside conference play, no doubt, than the schools will in the PAC, they're also going to be able to avoid some of the conference pitfalls that maybe schools in the PAC could. Obviously, Oregon State football has shown the ability to win, but they're a little down right now. And, UNLV in the new PAC, and whatever, you don't even have to use UNLV as an example, but say San Jose State's having an incredible year. I think that's a solid football program. They have a really good coach in Ken Neomatuleo. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's an excellent coach and an excellent man. These top schools can avoid pitfalls in conference play that schools in the PAC simply can't. The Mountain West is going to be a more top-heavy football league. And I think that gives the schools at the top of the Mountain West a competitive advantage. Now, it does not make up for the fact that they're in a worse conference, but it does help close that gap, especially for UNLV's case, that they have the ability with a geographic advantage to schedule good non-conference competition. The next point is about conference expansion. Let's move on to the next slide here. So the Mountain West has some people will probably not like the fact that I'm calling it an advantage here. But the Mountain West is not as brand conscious as the Pac-12 is. Now, what does that mean? The Pac-12 probably isn't interested in adding a school like Sacramento State, which is clearly showing that they have all the investment in the world trying to prepare that school to be a legit college football team at the D1 level. The Pac-12 probably has some issues with taking on an FCS school as one that's been recently promoted. The Mountain West has no such qualms. It has the ability to expand to greater numbers. It has the flexibility to add schools like UTEP. If the Mountain West added UTEP, and I thought that was a solid addition, even though UTEP's really struggled geographically, it made sense. Population center wise, it made sense. And adding UTEP didn't really hurt the Mountain West brand because the Mountain West, UTEP probably belonged in the Mountain West anyway. The Mountain West can add schools, has a wider selection of schools to add than the Pac-12 does, because the Mountain West is not as brand conscious as the Pac-12. Now, obviously, the Pac-12 has that brand advantage, but in the world of college football, when there are specific needs for expansion, the Mountain West has a wider pool of schools to work with, and that gives them a level of flexibility that the Pac-12 just doesn't have. The Pac-12 is not going to add New Mexico State. They don't want to do that. No way. But they probably need more than 8 members. Geographically, who are they going to add? The Mountain West has no problem taking North Dakota State or UC Davis when they move up to the FBS level, or Sacramento State when they move up to the FBS level, or maybe even Tarleton State when they move up to the FBS level. They got no problem taking those schools. It's not one, I don't think that there's a snootiness in terms of the membership of the Mountain West. Whereas for the Pac-12, there kind of is. And that makes sense. The Pac-12 wants to keep its brand. They're trying to at least maintain as much of that old Pac-12 brand as they can. The Mountain West, no such problem. The Pac-12's geography issues with membership are a big deal. The most West Coast school that the Pac-12 can add, and again, we've stipulated the fact that no Mountain West school is going to leave the Mountain West to join the Pac-12. The most West Coast school that the Pac-12 can add is New Mexico State, outside of Texas State, which we've also stipulated that is going to join the new Mountain West. The geography for the AAC schools is generally pretty difficult, and the AAC media deal is solid. I don't see schools like Memphis and Tulane, who are angling themselves for a possible Power 4 invite when the ACC could possibly blow up. They're not going to take that risk, not even as football-only members, I don't believe. It's not worth taking that risk right now for them. Whereas the Mountain West has no issue saying, hey, North Dakota State, you've been a power at your level. Come on up to the FBS level. Let's play ball. Hey, Sacramento State, you hired Brennan Marion. Come on up. Let's play ball. That gives them a wider pool of expansion candidates. Now, those schools may not add brand power to the Mountain West. They don't. But the Mountain West isn't as concerned with brand power in the first place. I'm just arguing that the Mountain West knows that it is not a premier conference. You will hear Pac-12 people argue that the Pac-12 is fighting to regain its autonomous 5 status. The Mountain West knows exactly what it is. And now we refer ourselves back to Tyrion Lannister. Know what you are, wear it like armor, and it cannot be used to harm you. The Mountain West knows that it is a G5 school that's primary value is in its time slot on the TV calendar, not in its brands. And that moves us on to the next point. And I think this is probably the most important point here. And it is the Mountain West is cheap for TV partners. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? As a non-premier conference and a conference that is not outside of a few fanatical Mountain West fans arguing that it is a Power 5 school or even that it is the best G5 conference, I don't think you're going to see very many. Obviously, there are some exceptions. No Mountain West fan is going out there and saying that, oh yeah, we're the best G5 conference. They don't have to make that claim. The Mountain West only promises a minimum, at least to its full share members, of $3.5 million a year. Well, the Mountain West cannot offer the best football brands that the Pac-12 can. What it can offer is affordable inventory to media partners in good time slots. The Mountain West has the Pacific, it has Hawaii, it has Mountain, and it has Central. The Mountain West isn't a Power 5 conference, and they aren't trying to be. West Coast football, outside of the Power 5, outside of your Oregons and USCs and those schools, have the majority of their value in sports betting. Obviously, regionally, the Pac-12 schools will get more viewership than the Mountain West schools, no doubt. But the value of the Mountain West has never been, at least in terms of football, outside of Boise State, of course, in its brand power. It has been in its time slots. Those East Coast schools in the SEC and the Big Ten are playing earlier in the day. And as it gets later at night, TV partners are looking for inventory to fill their broadcast schedule. And so therefore, the Mountain West's value is in knowing what it is. The Mountain West can provide you, if you're a media partner, if you're CBS, on CBS Sports, which CBS Sports, they want to broadcast games on there. Do you think they want to spend $10 million a year per school for a Pac-12 school? Or do they want to spend 3.5 for a Mountain West school? Obviously, the viewership won't be as good, but the value for them is inventory and price. My point is not that the Mountain West is worth more than the Pac-12. It isn't. But for TV partners, for schools that are not reliant on court cases and not reliant on a media deal to make up for the cost of leaving their conference, the Mountain West might be, and I think is, by a preponderance of the evidence, which basically means slightly more likely than not, I think the Mountain West is a better value proposition to TV partners than the Pac-12. Not because it has better brands, but because it knows that it's a G5 conference. And that's not to say that there is no valuable brands in the Mountain West. I mean, obviously, look, they're not as good as Boise State. They're not even as good as Colorado State. They're not as good as Washington State or Oregon State. But I'm sorry, UNLV has value as a brand in the Mountain West. They do. It's a growing and emerging market. NIU, obviously, that's not going to give you Chicago or anything, but NIU has proven over the years that they're a decent football program in the central time zone next to huge population centers. Now, they're not Boise State, but they're not trying to be. They're trying to be a Mountain West school. Hawaii has always had immense value to TV partners simply because of its time zone. Hawaii can broadcast games locally at times that no other school in the country can. Say what you want about San Jose and their crappy stadium. They hired a serious football coach. They've won a Mountain West championship. They've beaten Boise State before. Now, I'm not arguing they're as valuable as Oregon State, but again, they're not asking to be paid like they're Oregon State or Boise State. They're asking to be paid a bargain value bin. Point number 5. I think this is probably, if you were talking to people at UNLV who made the decision to keep UNLV in the Mountain West, this might be their number one point: legal security. The Mountain West is legally secure in a way that the Pac-12 is not. The Mountain West has been able to execute a valid grant of rights, secure sufficient membership, and add, at least specifically for the Mountain West, obviously not as valuable as the brands in the Pac-12, but the Mountain West has been able to add some value. NIU was an unequivocal win for the Mountain West. It was. Grand Canyon is a basketball-only school, is an unequivocal win for the Mountain West, despite what you think about that school for a G5 conference, at least on the basketball side, especially because they only play basketball. Grand Canyon provides value. Now, I'm not trying to say that the Pac-12 will not secure a grant of rights, but the Pac-12 is still run by people who have proven themselves to be imbeciles and incompetent and oversaw the destruction of an iconic original Pac-12 conference. Nothing in the recent track record of this group suggests that this leadership group can oversee a stable conference, because they haven't. If the ACC truly does blow up over the next few years and Boise State and Oregon State are snatched up, and say that gives Gonzaga some insecurity and they leave the Big 12 for basketball, why should you believe in the leadership of this new Pac-12 when they can't even keep their own conference together? And not only that, why should you believe in them when they made the fatal mistake, not the fatal mistake, but the damaging mistake of not finishing off the Mountain West at the outset of this conversation? The Pac-12 should have gotten enough schools from the Mountain West to finish that conference off and get rid of it as a threat. Now, in the head-to-head matchup, one game off, Pac-12 is always going to win. They got better schools, they got better brands, but the Mountain West's legal security is a huge asset against their fight with the Pac-12. The Mountain West has set up, okay, and let's get on some more UNLV stuff now. Next point. UNLV, the flagship brand. The Mountain West has set UNLV up to be a flagship brand. San Jose State with Ken has serious value. Air Force with Jared Calhoun has value as well as a service academy. So while ultimately UNLV will still have to earn a couple of tough wins in conference play, if the Rebels can maintain their current level of competitive competence and schedule well, they will still, year after year, have a chance at a college football playoff berth. Now, the chance won't be as high as if they were winning the Pac-12. I'm not saying that UNLV, by winning the Mountain West, is going to have as good of a chance of getting into the college football playoff as the Pac-12. But they still do have a chance. If the Pac-12 beats itself up and you have a bunch of 9-3 teams or 8-4 teams, a G5 school from a weak conference can still get the G5 spot despite a weak schedule in the college football playoff. See Liberty for an example of that recently. You're right. UNLV is running the risk of having a 12-0 year and still being left out of the college football playoff because an 11-1 Boise State team gets in over them, or an 11-1 Memphis team gets in over them. But if you want to talk about a 7-year sample size, UNLV is giving themselves a chance year after year if they remain competent, which it seems like they will, but you never know. If they remain competent, they're giving themselves a chance year after year to get to the college football playoff. Being in the Mountain West does not eliminate UNLV's chance to make the college football playoff. It doesn't. And honestly, I think guys like Jason Eck down there at New Mexico, I think that's a good hire. Jeff Chode from Reno University, I don't think that's a terrible hire. NIU, I think, is a solid school. UTEP with Scotty Walden, look, they're not going to be as good as the Pac-12 schools, but I think a lot of the Mountain West schools are making good arguments. Reno is finally building an indoor practice facility. Now, look, they're not going to be as good as the Pac-12 schools, but they're still going to be good enough that if UNLV has a great year, they will still give themselves a decent chance at a college football playoff bid. And with all the stability that they're getting, as well as financial payouts from the Mountain West, that has to be worth something. So there are a lot of Pac-12, and you'll notice that we did not have a Pac-12 attorney on this. There's a lot of comments here. I want to before I go on to the next ones, they need to buy TP for their bungholes. Thank you, John Nelson. Isn't the Mountain West dependent on the outcome of lawsuits for extra payouts to UNLV and Air Force? Actually, no. The Mountain West Grant of Rights explicitly states that the grant of rights is binding despite the outcome of the lawsuits. And let me tell you this, as a UNLV guy, I have talked to people at UNLV. They're committed to the Mountain West regardless of the outcome of the lawsuits. There's not going to be, at least in my opinion, and look, things could change, but I don't think any outcome of the lawsuit is going to make UNLV leave the Mountain West. I don't. Aces are more popular than UNLV basketball. That is true. That's because they win. The QB for UNLV next year will be Buster Snot Rocket. The Pac-12 is Mr. Pibb. The Mountain West is Dr. Thunder. I'd actually say, the Pac-12 is a very good non-Dr. Pepper type Dr. Pepper soda, and the Mountain West is a knockoff brand, but it still has value. I mean, it's cheaper. Mountain West has the right to dilute its product through expansion. Because of the way expansion works and because of the short timeline between now and 2032, I don't think that the Mountain West is really going to dilute its brand because its brand isn't that strong enough in the first place. San Diego SD Sports Fiend. It's not like the Mountain West is trying to protrude an autonomous 5 conference. They're a G5 conference. They know it. And I don't think that their brand is going to be diluted. They can pretty much add anybody. The Pac-12 can't. If the Pac-12 adds NMSU, it would be a major troll. Yeah, I don't expect them to add NMSU. I'm just saying if you want to talk about football playing schools on the West Coast, after they add Texas State, I really think their options kind of become limited. I just have never bought into the UTSA or the North Texas stuff at all. John, no one wants an MSU. Yeah, nobody does. Break glass in case of emergency. They are. No one is going to watch FCS football, which is what left over in the Mountain West will be. The thing is, like I said before, the Mountain West is not trying to be a premier football conference. People do watch North Dakota State. Those games, they don't get huge viewership, but they do get viewership. And the value of the Mountain West is not in the brands that it is playing, that are playing each other. It is in the time slots and sports gambling. You're right. No one's going to watch it, but nobody was watching it anyway. The Mountain West was never a huge football viewership conference. And while the Pac-12 will get higher viewership, but the Mountain West will provide cheaper prices. I think the Pac-12 should add Texas State and Sam Houston with agreements that that they can add 6 more seats to their stadium. Sam Houston beat Texas State last year. Yeah, I think Sam Houston is a legitimate target, although with them just transitioning up to, and we'll get into closing statements here in just a second. I just want to make sure I get your guys' comments. I think the Pac-12, yeah. So Sam Houston just transitioned from FCS to Division I, and I don't expect the Pac-12 to add a school that was so recently FCS. And also, I don't know that Sam Houston with a school, I mean, it costs a ton of money to transition to D1. I don't see Sam Houston having the financial capability of joining the Pac-12 at this point in time. If you look at the non-Mountain West and non-AAC schools west of the Mississippi that are available, Texas State, yeah, I mean, there's just not a lot there. There's not a lot. They'll add Texas State, they'll stay put, but expansion's a good thing in college sports, and I guess we'll see. Anything else? Yeah, listen, man, you're totally right that UNLV hasn't actually won anything yet, but the Mountain West is projecting UNLV as the flagship brand, and San Diego State as a school that's leaving the conference doesn't really need to worry about that because they're going to go probably, not do great in football in the Pac-12. They'll do very well in basketball, and they'll continue to be an elite premier basketball fan conference, but I don't expect them to dominate in football in the new Pac-12. So let's go for the closing statement. So I guess before I go into the closing statement, I want to further reiterate why I think the Pac-12 is not a long-term conference. One, media partners have been paying a lot of these schools in the Pac-12 $3.5 million for a long time as their media payout distributions. Colorado State, San Diego State, Boise State, not Boise State because they have an extra 1.8 million or so. So I think like they get to like 5.3 in the current Mountain West. But these media partners have been paying most of these G5 schools at 3.5 million for a long time. Now, are they worth more than that? Yeah, they are. But the media partners, ultimately, how much are they going to want to pay for something that they've been getting at a price already? You know? And while they definitely have potential, why I think the Pac-12 suffers from real instability is because they have to make more money than the Mountain West does to survive and thrive. The Mountain West has a lower level of subsistence from the that it needs to keep operating that the Pac-12 does, because they're not relying and they don't have to pay exit fees or poaching penalties or whatever crazy lawsuit Pac-12 leadership is pursuing at any given time. And they're not always necessarily crazy, but Pac-12 is just a very litigious group of people. And so ultimately, what's the value of the Mountain West? It's the bargain bin. It's the bargain bin. And I think that a lot of their, businesses sell on bulk and volume, and the Mountain West has bulk and volume at an affordable price. And that's why I think ultimately over the 6-year period, you're going to see schools leave the Pac-12 to join Power 5 conferences, probably Boise State, Oregon State, maybe San Diego State. And I don't think the Mountain West will have a problem continuing its existence because it's not trying to be an autonomous 5 conference. It's just trying to be a solid, steady group of 5 conference. And so I don't think the Pac-12 will exist in its form. Now, the Pac-12 might eventually merge with the Mountain West in 2032, and they might call it the Pac-12. But for all intents and purposes, I do not expect, because of the instability at the Pac-12 and between their leadership and the amounts that they're trying to get these schools to be paid, I do not see them lasting long-term, 10 years or so. I don't see it. Now, I didn't talk about UNLV to the Big 12 in this because, I think UNLV's got a long way to go before we're talking about this. But with payouts, with consistent winning, UNLV can create itself as a real brand. And so let's go into the closing statements. Closing statements here. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we examine 2 futures for Western athletics. The Pac-12, despite its historical prominence, now stands burdened by financial uncertainty, unstable leadership, and an unclear path forward to achieving its goal of autonomous 5 status. The Mountain West Conference, by contrast, offers financial predictability, strategic clarity, and a legally secure foundation. The Mountain West knows what it is and leverages its strengths strategically. Affordable media inventory, valuable geographic positioning, flexibility and expansion, and a clear vision for its flagship brand, UNLV, and Air Force, of course, as a service academy. It understands its markets, its members, and its potential. Ultimately, the choice isn't merely between 2 conferences. It's about choosing stability over uncertainty. A conference that's willing to look at the Power 5 conferences and say, yeah, we're cool being a G5 conference. We're cool making what we've made. And a conference that's saying, let me in, bro. Pick me. That's what the Pac-12 is doing. The Mountain West isn't doing that. I confidently urge you to recognize the Mountain West not only as the best available option, but as an essential choice to safeguard a prosperous, stable, and competitive future for Western college football. And of course, for the brand that I care so much about, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I really appreciate you guys checking out the show tonight. I want to go in and see if there's any more comments. I think that UNLV, now that the decision's been made, I feel more comfortable with it. I wanted UNLV to make a different choice, but ultimately I do think that there are legitimate legal arguments. And, I wish they would have gone the Pac-12 route, but this is the route that we take. It's like when we hired Josh Pastner. I obviously wasn't a big fan of that hire initially, but I love UNLV more than I love my pride. And I'm a pretty prideful person, don't get me wrong. I love the Rebels. I love the city of Las Vegas. I actually, even though the Mountain West schools are leaving, I actually love the Mountain West. I love San Diego State. I love Utah State. I love Boise State. I'm sad that it's ending this way, but I can see the point of financial stability. SD Sports Fiend says, Jason, you are the most reasonable of the UNLV fans. While I disagree wholeheartedly with your arguments, I appreciate your takes. Hey, somebody can make an argument like this, and I have kind of been making an argument like this on behalf of the Pac-12 for months now. I've been saying UNLV needs to take a risk, needs to bet on itself, needs to bet on its brand, needs to help kind of destroy the Mountain West. They need to take a leap of faith like these other Mountain West schools did, and they weren't willing to do that ultimately. There are tons of arguments that you can make for the Pac-12. And I think probably the most place where people will disagree with me here is in the stipulated facts. But I really appreciate you checking out the show. Really do. And I know that it's been a contentious time for the Mountain West, but I hope for this last year that we can resort to normal trash talk, just normal trash talk between the schools of the conferences. I hope, even though I was a person that wasn't a big fan of the Mountain West, I hope that I was able to legally represent them, even if you disagree with me, in a way that you found maybe not persuasive, but at least reasonable. And I hope one day that I can be a good attorney. I hope one day to be a good attorney. So, guys, that's going to be it for this session. I really appreciate you checking out the show tonight. This was kind of a passion project that I kind of came up with at the last moment. And maybe I'll do something like this again in the future, talking about college football playoff resumes or something. But you guys are all wonderful. I appreciate you. Let's go Rebels, and let's run. Woo! Peace out, guys.